going to talk about capacity, and we've talked about volume previously, and volume had to do with similar to capacity because we're trying to see how many cubes would fit inside of an object to fill that object. Capacity we talked about in science class, where we have had cups and various containers, and we fill that container all the way to the very, very top edge of that container to find its capacity. So I want to focus on the units that are involved in capacity for this particular lesson because it's supposed to be a review. It should not be anything that's new to you, but you are going to be doing some conversions, so you need to know how to go from one unit to another. So let's review. When we're talking about capacity in particular, we're most of the time going to be using these units. So we're going to use milliliters, liters, pint, quart, and gallon. Okay, those are the 5 main units that we are going to use when we are referring to capacity. Now, we have a poster in the classroom that looks similar to this. It's a lot bigger, but this diagram is very helpful when we're trying to remember how many quarts are in a gallon, how many pints in a quart, how many cups in a quart. So just to kind of explain how this works, the big G here would be our gallon. And in 1 gallon, we have 4 of these Q's, which are going to represent quarts. So there are 4 quarts in 1 gallon. And then the P is going to represent a pint. So 2 pints are in 1 quart. And in 1 pint, we have 2 cups. So if you can remember this diagram or draw it to help you if you're converting specifically between gallons, quarts, pints, and cups, then this comes in pretty handy because you basically just have to count the letters when you're trying to find that. Another thing that would be very important, and again, we have this poster in our room as well, is when we are converting, if we can remember, if we're going from a small unit to a big unit, we're going to divide. And notice how I have a little phrase here to try to help remember that. Small babies dancing. We've got the S, the B, the D for small unit, big unit, and divide. So that's kind of where that comes from. Or we have best soccer mom and BSM, or big unit to small unit, means we're going to multiply. So if you can kind of use those charts and maybe remember those phrases, it's going to help you with your conversions. I've got a couple of examples, or I should say 3 up here today, for this particular little memory chart. And then we have some things where we're not going to be able to use that chart, so I'll pull those up in a minute. So let's say that we have 5 quarts, and I want to know how many pints that is. So if I have 5 quarts, there's 4 in 1 gallon, right? But I want to know how many pints that is. So if I look specifically at a quart, just 1 is going to be 2 pints. Now, is a quart a bigger unit or a smaller unit than a pint? A quart is a bigger unit. So we're going from a big unit to a small unit. That means we're going to multiply. So I have 2 pints in 1 quart, and if I have 5 quarts, I'm going to take this 5 times 2. So off to the side, I want to be thinking 5 times 2 because I'm going from a big unit to a small unit. I'm going to multiply. That's going to be 10 pints. Okay? Now for this problem, we have pints and we have cups. Okay? I want you to think about that for a minute. So for 1 pint, I have 2 cups. Am I going from big to small or small to big? So basically, since I have my answer over here, I want to think of that the opposite way because I actually have the small unit. I'm trying to figure out the big unit. So we're going from small unit to big unit. We want to divide. So when I think about cups and pints, there's 2 in 1 pint. 2 cups in 1 pint. So I want to divide 8 divided by 2. So that means there's going to be 4 pints is equal to 8 cups. And if I look at my letters here, I have 2, 4, 6, 8 cups there, and there's 2, 4 pints. So I can kind of check myself to make sure I did it correctly. Now I have 3 gallons is equal to how many quarts? So remember, the gallon is the large unit, the quart is the small. So I'm going big to small. So I'm going to multiply. So if there's 4 quarts in 1 gallon, if I have 3, I'm going to do 3 times 4. So that's going to give me 12 quarts. So 3 gallons is equal to 12 quarts. Now, we're not always going to have this chart, which of course you can draw anytime you want to, as long as you can remember how it works out. And this poster you might not always have to look at, so that's going to be something else that you might want to try to memorize. Because most of the time when we're converting units, they're going to give us some kind of conversion chart that we are going to look back at. And remember, you have a conversion chart in the back of your SRB. So that always comes in handy and it's always there for you to look back at. But sometimes you'll have a chart that looks like this. So if we have 1,000 milliliters is equal to 1 liter, 1 milliliter is equal to 1/1000th of a liter, and 1 pint is equal to 16 ounces. Okay, we might have a chart like that, and then they would give us some problems that we would have to use that chart to make those conversions. Again, if you can remember the small unit to the big unit, you're going to divide, and the big unit to the small unit, you're going to multiply. That's going to help you. So if we think about milliliters to liters, okay, if I have 32 milliliters and I'm trying to figure out liters, am I going to multiply or divide? And I actually have to divide this problem by 1,000, okay? So that means that my answer is going to be a decimal. Okay, it's going to come out to 32 thousandths of a liter. Okay, and if you think about it this way, there are 3 zeros up here in this thousand. And if I'm dividing, I'm moving this decimal point 3 places to the left. Now, some of you might get that, some of you might not. Don't worry about it if you don't get it. Just remember that you're dividing by 1,000. So basically, when you set that problem up, it would look like this, okay? Because it's 32 divided by 1,000. That's where we get that decimal point, and we're going to add some zeros to that. We haven't really done a lot of that in class, but this would be where a calculator would come in handy if you weren't sure how to do division in that particular way. But basically, that's what you're doing, so you kind of understand that. If we look at the next one, we have 4 liters, and we're turning that into milliliters. So I know 1 liter is 1,000, right? So this is going from big to small. And that means we're going to multiply. So I'm going to multiply 4 times 1,000. So that means that this is going to equal 4,000 milliliters. Okay? If we look at this one, we have 32 ounces is equal to how many pints? Well, I know 16 ounces is 1 pint. Now, here's the question, is which one's smaller, the ounce or the pint? The ounce is smaller, so we're going from small to big, and that means that we're going to divide, okay? So if we're going from ounces to pints and we divide, again, this is going to be kind of a hard one, right? Because how many pints are we going to divide by 16? So if we have 32 divided by 16, that's going to give us 2 pints. Because 16 and 16 is 32. Okay? So what you're going to have to remember is when we go from a big unit to a small unit, we're going to multiply. So this is really important. If we go from a small unit to a big unit, we're going to divide. If you can remember these two sayings and this diagram right here, that's going to help you with a lot of your conversions. It's just going to take some practice, and it's not something that you're probably going to have all of these units memorized and know. I mean, eventually you should know the standard units, like how many quarts are in a gallon and those kinds of things, because we use those a lot. But you may not know, how many centimeters are in a meter. I mean, we do use that a lot, but I'm just trying to come up with an example there. So there will be some conversions that you won't have memorized, but some of them you will, because you'll use them a lot. And you're going to see them a lot, but just know that you need to use the conversion tables in the back of your SRB. They're going to come in handy. Just remember, this is going to help you, and these little sayings are going to help you. And try to figure out if you're going from a large unit to a small, or a small to a big. Those kinds of things are going to help you figure that out. So again, if you have questions, write them down specifically in your notes. We will be practicing several of these in class. So hopefully you'll start to get the hang of it if this is something that a lot of you still need to work on. I know when I sometimes look at your math boxes, there's questions like you don't know how to do these. So it's just something that takes a lot of practice, and if you don't, do it several times a week, you kind of forget. So again, we will practice in class, and I will see you then. Bye-bye.